Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Rob Schadey, the Acting Deputy Program Executive Officer for Enterprise Information Systems for the U.S. Army. Hey, Rob, thanks for joining the program.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you on. We'll have to discuss the comic books if we have time at some point, but obviously we're here today to discuss cloud services and how the Army is leading in and leveraging those, and has been leveraging those. And I think it's always good to level set to start these conversations. So can you walk us through how PEO EIS is relying on cloud services today, and maybe how we got to this point in recent years?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Army PEO EIS has been increasingly relying on cloud services over the last 5 years, really to modernize and enhance our systems capabilities. So most important, I would say, we're completely shifting to software development and delivery in the cloud. So there's a couple different policies. One is called 5075, which really addresses defense business systems. And we're making a substantial shift and transition to what's called 5087, which is software pathways. That really includes our programs such as the Global Force Information Management System, Army Ignited, Army Contract Writing System, and several others where we're beginning with the flexibilities of software development from an agile perspective. And our PEO has really evaluated multiple different agile methodologies, and we've really settled on the agile safe method because it allows us to deliver capability through agile release trains and PI planning in coordination and cooperation with our customers. But to kind of get back to the cloud aspect, which is where we're focused and where we're, really working, is we've really began to utilize cloud services that include data storage and backup capabilities, costs. Those costs continue to increase, and cloud services are being used for storing and backing up data, helping from an audit and cybersecurity perspective, and ensuring data availability and disaster recovery, leveraging cloud is really been critical. The other one I would say is collaboration tools, we're on Zoom, but the Army's predicated on Office 365 and Microsoft Teams. And those collaboration tools, looking back, we did substantial amount of cloud migrations in the business mission area of our financial and logistics systems. And we did all of that during COVID. So, having those collaboration tools was really critical for us. And it enabled seamless sharing of documentation and resources that we could kind of crash and collaborate on. The other one I would say is software development and testing. Cloud services are utilized for software development and testing, providing scalability, cost efficiency, in a cost-effective environment, to develop teams and to create, test, and continuously deploy following that agile methodology. And then the last one, which I think is really critical, we leverage infrastructure as a service, but a lot of folks forget the requirement and capability for platform as a service, where PaaS is offering our offerings and being utilized for rapid application development and deployment, like low-code, no-code solutions and other capabilities and needs that EIS is using to build out and deploy, without the need to manage the underlying infrastructure and those associated costs. So, over the last 5 years, our reliance on cloud services within the Army has evolved significantly, and there might have been some hesitancy and some concern regarding security and reliability in the beginning. I think many of our programs have really demonstrated the benefits in the shift toward embracing cloud and the fundamental components of IT modernization initiatives.
Got it. Thank you for that overview. That's great. And obviously, there's a lot of different areas to pull on there. I'd love to start, actually with transitioning to the software pathways, programs. And you talked about the Army contract writing system and a few others, and how you've settled on the SAFE method. Tell us a little bit about, what SAFE is, why that's important, why that's kind of the method that you all have decided to go with, and how it's going to drive some of those programs forward.
Yeah. So we initially, when we started building out clouds services, secure cloud computing architecture, back in like 2018-19 timeframe, we were really focused on just agile Scrum, right? Taking user stories, figuring out how to support and build those stories into sprints. And we weren't even settled on like 2 week sprint delivery, right? We were looking at 4 weeks and 6 weeks in some cases. And we really, right, we're focused on the build out of infrastructure, and making sure that we were keeping track of really what we were doing, where we were going, and then that we were effective, right, in tracking all those associated activities with that build out. Now we're at the point, right, where we're leveraging automations, right, within the cloud, whether that be, Kubernetes, right, or other capabilities to help with automation. All of that really tailors into, right, our transition and maturity from, what we were comfortable with from an agile perspective to pulling things up to a '06 kernel program management level and managing multiple different software delivery efforts that really impacted all layers and levels, right, of the capability delivery that our customers required. So one of the huge benefits of Agile Safe is the ability to create what's called an Agile release train. And really that's building upon capability sets with dedicated sprint teams to help with delivery. And it also allows us to incorporate the user and user experience as a part of that delivery. So, right, to tailor back to, right, software pathways and Agile Safe, the biggest way I can kind of summarize and bring this together is, when you follow a traditional waterfall process, you're really playing a guessing game in terms of creating an integrated master schedule with dates. And more often than not, you're really focused on the integrated master schedule itself and trying to hit a date. Whereas in Agile, right, there's flexibility there to work with the customer to hit on capability delivery and progress of that over a 2 week rate sprints. So, right, instead of playing the guessing game with a date, we're getting more concrete with delivery of agile software by leveraging Agile Safe and working with our customer and functionals on the capability and delivery needs that they have.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think you mentioned the Army contract writing system and a couple other programs are going to be transitioning to those software pathways.
So yes, we have a few programs that are already on software pathways. Other programs are beginning that transition and working toward right, moving from 5075 to software pathways. And in some cases, some of our new start programs are starting off in software pathways.
Interesting. That's exciting for software development within the Army. And so, taking a step back, I think one of the areas PEO EIS has been focused on is, the use of cloud services for things like enterprise business systems. You talk about, how PEO EIS has used cloud for ERP and how that might be, setting up more modernized access to the cloud for your customers as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. Right, we collectively as the Army made the decision to transition from on-prem right into the cloud several years ago. And I had the opportunity to lead those cloud transformation efforts from an EIS perspective and in support of the Army. So, right, we made that transition for several reasons. We're at the point of life cycle refresh, right, of hardware within the data centers that we consumed. We knowingly had to modernize some of the software capabilities to stay on track with our requirements. But then I would say most importantly, we really wanted to move to an enterprise approach to what we were doing. So I would say EIS utilizes cloud services, right, that are authorized from FedRAMP all the way from infrastructure, right? And we work the infrastructure automations to platform to SaaS for the Army ERP systems to host and manage the systems in a secure, scalable cloud environment that our team, right, developed and delivered. That also allowed us to leverage the benefits of cloud computing with the flexibility and scalability to put right cost effectiveness and rigors to manage our costs in place over our ERP systems. So, right, kind of going back on that journey, right, I'll call out somebody. Back in 2019, right, EIS partnered with ECMA, and essentially it was based on the relationship between Paul Puckett and I. Paul was a former director of Enterprise Cloud Management Agency, and we really pushed the envelope with cloud, and we worked together on a cloud account management optimization contract. Right, EIS was one of the largest consumers of cloud infrastructure. Paul and I wanted to really bring some leverage in over the negotiations of the infrastructure we were consuming. And we really wanted to track and manage the costs for the Army, because ultimately, right, we still need to go in and we need to properly POM, right? We're going into POM 26 through 30, right? And because we started those efforts in 2019, we're at a really good place to go in with some confidence over the next 5 years to properly identify what infrastructure we're consuming, what the costs are associated with it, and what that CAMO contract did in terms of the ability to negotiate and get reserved instances with AWS and buy down some of our costs within Microsoft Azure. So, right, that included customers migrating their applications and data to the cloud, managing their cloud resources, and again, right, driving on that compliance we needed, all within that contract, all with that proper enterprise visibility that led to our financial operations practices that we put into place in headquarters.
Yeah, that's a great lead. And I wanted to ask you about financial operations, or FinOps. I mean, you go to a government technology modernization conference and you still hear folks talking about, I'm not sure if what the cloud savings I'm being pitched on are actually real. I don't know exactly what to think. How did you develop that FinOps rigor, I think you put it? And how is that borne out in terms of cost savings? Is there any number that you can share with us today?
Yeah, so I would say, like, right, financial operations and a FinOps practice, and the one that we put in at EIS headquarters, played a critical role in managing and controlling the cost of cloud services. Right, that practice involved the implementation of processes, tools, monitoring, analysis, and really the right folks to optimize cloud spending to ensure it aligned with our budget and goals. So we have the opportunity early on to partner with a small company, N2IA Technologies, to really jumpstart our FinOps efforts back in 2021. So, right, some of the key aspects of that FinOps practice that we put into place at headquarters were, number one, we wanted to centralize our FinOps team, right? Because we're pulling in all the data elements to a centralized point. And that gave us the ability then to work back with the programs so that they could begin to kind of cost track and monitor their own infrastructure resource requirements. So the tracking and monitoring, right, were really led by our FinOps team, looking at cloud usage and associated costs in real time to identify, any discrepancies or areas of excessive spending, leaving resources on that weren't utilized. And it allowed them to kind of take prompt action to address issues and optimize those costs. The other one that I mentioned too, which was really important, was budgeting and forecasting. Our FinOps team worked closely with different departments to set and track budgets for cloud services. And we also really partnered with DASA CE, the cost estimation team, and headquarters DA, so that they could leverage, right, and begin to forecast techniques to predict future costs and plan accordingly for POM. That was a really important aspect. And then, right, the cost optimization itself. We continuously look for ways to optimize cloud costs. Those include right-sizing instances that we're consuming, utilizing discounts, and I mentioned those, like 1-year reserved instances and multiple year reserved instances, depending on the type of funding and color of funding we were using, and implementing those cost saving measures, right, that our FinOps team put into place. The other areas are like reporting and analysis. FinOps is the centralized heartbeat that provides, right, regular reports, analysis, cloud spending, cost trends, cost savings, opportunities to our stakeholders so that we can enable them to be informed and make the right decisions. So one great example, about 1.5 years ago, our G46 was really interested in how can I better leverage the cloud to reduce audit and right, backup costs for the Army. And our team quickly looked at and evaluated solutions and ran cost models for right, different backup and storage capabilities that weren't as advanced as like tier 1 or tier 2 type of storage offerings. And we really drove down and bent the curve on the cost from that perspective. But to really like nail down your specific question about, hey, what have you really saved, right, over your FinOps efforts? That team of 3 people, which we've had now for about 4 years, has achieved a cost avoidance for the Army of about $18 million. That includes leveraging the cost savings plans, modifying storage types, supporting automated patching, and catching misconfigurations or inaccurate scripts. So $18 million buy down to bend the curve over 4 years, to me, is a great return on investment. And it really shows that you put the right rigor and you get the right team in place. You can really identify cost savings that can right, be plugged or put into other places.
That's certainly a good news story for Army budgeteers, taxpayers, and everyone else, right? And so now that the Army and the rest of DoD is kind of moving to the JWCC contract, how are you kind of trying to share best practices about FinOps and kind of carry that forward into the future?
Yeah, our team is plugged into the FinOps community. There are a lot of, right, we've kind of worked to create a DoD or federal specific FinOps community. And there's weekly, or not weekly, but monthly meetings and tag ups. So, right, we're working to get the message out. And right, for the most part, it's well received. There's a ton of cooperation, ideas shared, and collaboration. I would say, right, with respect to JWCC, right, it's a viable contract. It's a great opportunity. I think, right, there's this leapfrog effect where we have to learn from one another with the services and contracts we put into place. And right for IL6 capabilities, the Army is all in on JWCC. Though I would say, with respect to JWCC, right, they don't have enough volume. And what I mean by that is, right, the amount of cloud infrastructure and services you consume, you can bring down the costs. And when we've done the cost comparisons, we're just not at that point where we could transition, because it would actually increase the cost to the Army, right, based off of those cost differences and volumes that we've got in place. At some point, right, it will make absolute sense to help right, drive down those costs on the next contract vehicle that DISA and JWCC work to put into place.
Yeah, it makes sense. So at a certain point, it'll reach a tipping point, but it hasn't quite at this point.
Correct.
Yeah. I wanted to follow up on something I think you've mentioned a couple times in terms of the cloud, and I think we were obviously just talking about cost savings, and but increasingly folks are looking at it both from that perspective and sort of the efficiencies you gain, but also the backup, the cybersecurity, the resiliency it provides. Has that been a shift? Is it fair to say within the Army within recent years?
Yeah, there has been a shift, right? To be kind of brutally honest, right, about our ability, right, from an Army perspective, to manage a data center, to really provide the infrastructure to enable the capabilities that the cloud provides, right? I would say we're just not there, right? Like our ability and, right, our decision from a business perspective to consume the cloud was based off of, right, that shift to take advantage of the automations in order to be more efficient, to deliver software and software capability much more quicker and efficiently. But then, right, I think the final plug there is being able to really drive at the cybersecurity compliance. And the Army's kind of put out new direction with software as a service that I think makes a lot of sense. So this was just signed out earlier this week. And the whole shift is to partner with industry to receive all of the audit and cybersecurity details, right, from the cloud service providers, especially with respect to software as a service capabilities. So being able to kind of realize what auditing and logging and cybersecurity activities are going on puts us in a really good position of looking at the cyber perspective and issues that would be across the Army from an enterprise perspective, and then be able to share that back with those industry partners if there are shifts or change with the cybersecurity threats that we see. Right, we're all in to right, partner and protect our interests, and part of our interest is that partnership with those SaaS service providers.
That's really interesting. And, in terms of the partnership there, I'm not sure if the recent memo you referenced gets into this, but how do the responsibilities, I guess, kind of shake out between the Army, what they're going to do, and what Army is going to, rely on, ask the cloud service providers to do? How does that kind of shared responsibility model work?
It's right. It's all going to be dependent on the authorizing official from a cybersecurity perspective. So that's a really good question, right? It's going to be based on the comfort level of, number one, what is the impact level we're consuming? What type of data elements do we have and where are they at? And then what is the comfort level of that authorizing official over, right, that decision framework and what we have. So, right, when we're looking at like impact level 5 type of capabilities, national security or very sensitive data elements, we're definitely going to want to pull all of that auditing and logging detail so that, right, we're partnered with them and we understand it. When it comes to, right, lower level impact levels and less sensitive data types and criticality to our decisions and mission needs, right, we're going to lessen that, I would say, requirement on those service providers. But, right, for our interests, we really need to span, right, all the way from the infrastructure to the application layer activities to pull the right details together to make those cybersecurity decisions and better understand, right, the threats that we're up against.
And obviously that logging data comes at a cost in many cases. Do you think that you can kind of bring the same sort of FinOps rigor to the cybersecurity aspect of cloud services across the Army and DoD at large?
Yeah, and that's a great question, right? So our PEO EIS CIO Mike Chappell is working on a capability which we've kind of tagged as Neighborhood Watch, and that very much will be a capability where we're consolidating and collapsing to a security information event management capability and solution. We are working to put that in place within the cloud. And right, we will apply the same financial operations rigor because it will be in the cloud. So, right, all of the infrastructure monitoring and decision processes will flow through our FinOps team to help with those decisions and find those efficiencies to drive down the costs. And you make a great point. The costs do go up because of the amount of storage and capability and logs we're collecting. But right, that collapsing that and architecting that the right way will help better manage those costs. But right, the cost is worth the risk, right? Or the cost is worth every penny to have those details and that data. So that's a really critical, I think, aspect. Not everything that's done from a cloud perspective is done with the intent to drive down costs, but right, it's there to enable efficiencies and automations and tap into the services that cloud can offer. Right, so in this scenario, we will be able to enable machine learning and other things over those data and data sets to help us get better details in those logs with the threats that we're up against.
All right. Well, that's great to know. Good information there, and I'm glad we were able to bring cybersecurity into the conversation as well. And shifting gears a little bit to the workforce, I'm wondering, what have you observed about the skills that are needed to take advantage of cloud services to continue to drive that forward into the future? How are you trying to drive that workforce issue at PEO EIS?
Yeah, that's a key question, right? And I'd be remiss if I didn't just come out and say we're struggling like every other agency. It's really difficult, right, to identify the right folks who can manage and enable our cloud capabilities, right? So the build out of cloud, automating and scripting what we need from a cloud perspective, it's a struggle, and we're competing every day with industry. I think the big difference is, right, the satisfaction in the mission and the type of, right, criticality, right, that we need to have. So the type of resources, right, that we really need are actually coming into some key positions within PEO EIS here in the coming months. So we've got a machine learning and AI chief coming in. We have a chief architect coming in, and those positions, right, are really tailored to help enable our programs and help enable ASALT as a whole in the lessons learned and the details we collect, right, in collaboration with the other programs and in collaboration with DASA data engineering and services. So, we have extended what we can in terms of, benefits, pay, but again, it's the change in the satisfaction of the mission we have and the unique challenges that we are up against. I think that can make it attractive to those who would want to make a shift or change in their career.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's really about the mission, because you can't compete with the salaries you're seeing out in Silicon Valley and other places, I'm sure.
Well, and I would also offer too, like, right, there's nothing wrong with a revolving door. And what I mean by that is pulling people in from industry to learn more about what we're doing, how we do it, and right, gaining the knowledge in terms of the way that they do things. And then they go back to industry and you've got a great partnership. I do think the revolving door is an important aspect. And I think it should not be overlooked, right? Ability to go back and forth should be there. We should make it easy for those who are interested in that opportunity and want to do it, so that we can, right, get the right talent we need for maybe short periods of time that we need it.
Really interesting point. Yeah, and I think we're definitely seeing that, right? Folks coming in from industry after having, a successful career, they've probably made plenty of money, so they can take some time. But it is difficult to move in and out with a lot of different positions. All right, and you mentioned how you're bringing in an AI and machine learning chief. I'd love to learn a little bit more about some of the goals at PEO EIS for taking advantage of some of these AI machine learning applications that we're just seeing obviously explode on the scene here over the last year or so.
So here's the way I'm going to answer that, right? The future of cloud services at EIS is incredibly promising because we are moving to software acquisition pathways and we are doing our development, right, starting within the cloud. Those cloud services, right, will provide that agility, scalability, and also open up the opportunity for us to leverage artificial intelligence. Right now, right, that potential to revolutionize what we're doing through AI is being developed and delivered, not necessarily within PEO EIS, but the pathfinder and leader for AI in the Army and ASALT is with PEO IEW&S, led by Brigadier General Barker and Project Linchpin. So IEW&S is standing up, right, their future program management office focused on AI and ML ops in an environment that'll enable rapid development, integration, and deployment, right, of advanced analytics. So utilizing AI and those algorithms, we can automate and streamline processes of creating and designing new software solutions, enabling us to accelerate our development cycles and deliver high quality products more efficiently. So, right, we're all in and part of what's going on within Project Linchpin so that we can collectively work together, benefit from that, and begin to incorporate, right, AI into our cloud services and infrastructure to explore possibilities like, predictive analytics, natural language processing, autonomous systems, right? All of those things that all of our different PEOs must factor and leverage from an AI perspective.
Is there a lot of demand at this point from the different program offices to want to use some of those products? How are you kind of managing that now as the Army enterprise moves to kind of get its house in order?
Yeah, so within ASAL, each of our programs have been asked for candidate programs to support right AI and ML, and we're actively working through that process. And I think right as um, Project Linchpin understands more about where the limitations are or where we need to make sure we provide the proper scope over what we're doing, we're going to begin to move out quickly. I think there's a lot of utility in leveraging artificial intelligence, especially for cybersecurity auditing and threat hunting and detection. In addition to really enabling a lot of the changes and things that we need from a predictive logistics perspective, right, with our logistics systems. And those are really kind of the two mainstay areas that I think we within PEO EIS are going to push on in collaboration with IEWS and Project Linchpin.
That's really interesting. Yeah, we've talked a little bit about cybersecurity. What's the vision for predictive logistics, and how are you pulling that together?
Yeah, so predictive logistics really aligns within PEO C3T. I've had the opportunity over the past few months to do a lot of collaboration with C3T on how do we move data from the tactical side into the business mission area side so senior leaders can get a better understanding of, for example, how much fuel are we burning and where do we need pre-position fuel stock at the next checkpoint. So right, those are all different opportunities where I think we're going to look at and enable AI, but also right, be able to present that data and that information as senior leaders. And it has to transpire right all the way from the tactical edge to the cloud, right, where we're processing and enabling that data with a lot of other right things that we're doing. But readiness is really the key to that, and making sure that we're leveraging right the cloud and predictive logistics to kind of help enable those areas.
And in working through those issues, is it purely a data, formatting, unstructured data challenge? Is it a throughput challenge? What are some of the issues?
Throughput is always going to be a problem, right? Because you're pushing right mass amounts of data down, and you only want to deliver the data that's needed at the edge. Pushing data up and up to a certain level is not necessarily a problem. It's really how we identify and prioritize the right data that needs to move right from tactical to the business mission area. So C3T is going to begin working with a capability called the Joint Tactical Data Interface. And that's really where we're going to have to work to make sure that the data from the tactical space works through that interface where it is collected, harbored, and can be prioritized to move forward into the business mission area or the cloud. So JTDI is really one of the areas that I think PEOC3T is going to begin to look at to drive on that.
Really interesting. That's a great example of how kind of the mission tactical side integrates with the business enterprise side in a really fascinating way. Well, as we come to the end here, I want to give you I know you're transitioning to a new role at the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency soon. So I'd love just to get your thoughts on just your time at PEO EIS and then what's on your to-do list for your successor as deputy.
First of all, I want to thank right the Army and PEO EIS for the past 6.5 years. I've had a tremendous opportunity to lead the migration and modernization of the Army's business mission systems into the cloud. I've had the opportunity to develop digital transformation strategy, support agile initiatives under the previous PEO, Mr. Ross Gukert, and continue that momentum under Mr. Bill Hepworth, right? So that has been my look back and some of the accomplishments and contributions to the Army that EIS has made, and I've had the opportunity to be a part of. When I look forward, right, the opportunity to work at DCSA really fits my background and experience in technology, acquisition, and digital transformation and modernization. And the most important aspect there to me is I'm looking forward to being part of that team and on the forefront of ensuring, right, national security of critical systems and infrastructure. Right, it's just a great opportunity to become part of the gatekeeper team that's there. So that's right. That's really how I kind of summarize right that question.
Yeah, very good. And your new role at DCSA is with the National Background Investigation Services Program. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll be the executive program manager over the National Background Investigation Services.
Very
Correct.
good. Very good. All right. And so in terms of are you leaving kind of here's what I have loved to have done if I had more time memo on your desk for the next person, or what do you still have on your to-do list?
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of things on my to-do list, and I'm right making the shift and transition over to DCSA. I start there Monday, the 11th of March. So it hasn't given a tremendous amount of time. What I would say is the single biggest factor I would leave or impart is organizational change doesn't happen overnight. And you have to be positioned with the right mentality to kind of right be gentle and patient with the transformation and transformation needs of the organization. And my advice, right, is to prop up the programs that are doing really well and enable the collaboration and learning between those who need to engage and get that knowledge. So I don't have like one right a one to end or list of things because right there's so many. It's just being positioned to really drive and help on communications, patience, learning, and understanding between the organization to get after all of the priorities, right, problems and needs that the Army has to solve.
Okay, and then I promised this at the beginning. Is there any backstory you can share on the comic book collection and how that's built up over the years?
Yeah, so that's I'd say like 40 years of comic book collecting. And I spent 6 years in the Marine Corps, so Punisher's near and dear to my heart. And I've got a substantial collection of Punisher comic books, but I call it expensive wallpaper. I think it's kind of like known kind of throughout the Army, those who've been in, Teams calls or Zoom calls with me, they've enjoyed it. But I love that aspect of it. I love the hobby, and it's frankly not a bad investment if you do it right.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an expensive set of wallpaper behind you. It makes for more interesting background than your traditional virtual background too. So that's cool as well. Well, Rob Schadey, he's the Acting Deputy Program Executive Officer for Enterprise Information Systems at the Army. Rob, thanks again for taking the time and best of luck at DCSA.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. I'm Justin Doubleday, and you're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more on the DoD Cloud Exchange.